Okay guys, welcome back. So on the other side of the camera for a little change, here with my great pal Scot Cowx, we're going to be looking today at how to try and help someone like myself and like those of you out there who suffer with a little bit of a right to left ball flight for the righty golfer, a bit of the hook, which is something that we've worked on a lot together, trying to eliminate that from my own game. And I think as people have seen me hit kind of balls more on the channel in Matty's absence, a lot of the questions I've been getting are, how did you do that? What have you guys worked on? And I would love to share some of that today.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can kind of go through a couple of the main causes why we see, especially good players generally struggle with a little bit of a too much overdraw or too much hook, and we can kind of pinpoint those causes and understand a little bit of why those things happen, and really give you a couple of very quick, easy solutions on how to straighten out that path. So I think one of the interesting things will be to maybe have you hit a couple of shots, just get a baseline with your path and face value.
Yep.
And then we can sort of institute a few of those changes and talk about it as we go.
Okay, love it, love it. Those of you that have followed the channel for quite some time will know that fitting has been a real crutch, I would call it, for me when it comes to my ball flight. Flat lie angles, at times playing shafts that are a little bit on the stiffer side, trying to kind of eliminate any face rotation. So I'm trying to take those band-aids off slowly but surely as I trust the club face a little bit more now, and the path is starting to get a little bit more neutral, the angle of attack's getting a little more down. I'm less of that shallow flipper that I used to be. So hopefully we'll see a little bit of that as we go on, that we don't need all those things as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And when we look at some of the great faders that are there today, we look at Colin Morikawa, we look at Victor Hovland, obviously Dustin Johnson. These are predominantly fade players, and some of the things that they do, and we have to understand kind of how they hit the golf ball a little bit differently than perhaps some of the drawers in the game, like Rory McIlroy or Tommy Fleetwood.
Yeah.
And looking at some of the ways they sort of utilize the wrists a little bit around the golf ball, as well as the positioning really of their body, of their joint structures, is really the key to sort of eliminating that left ball.
Love it. Okay. Right on cue.
There you go.
That's it. I mean, that's.
We used to have a fellow on my high school golf team. We called him NASCAR because everything was a left turn.
Going left all day, every day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we have path at 4, 6 down. Good strong strike, but obviously a little bit overdrawn.
Yep, and I think that's the golf course for me. Indoors, what I'm very likely to do when I'm able to see the numbers and things like that, I'm probably able to make a more neutral pass at it, which to me feels like I'm slightly over it.
Right.
And I can neutralize that path a little bit, and I just have to feel fades to neutralize the draw. But on the golf course, that's not always as easy to translate that over. So the learning for me will be to how do I be that person all the time, not just when I see numbers.
Right, so let's kind of describe a little bit to people why that type of a movement happens. So there's a couple things that we have to be aware of. Number one, where the club center of mass is positioned at the top of the backswing has a large point on what we end up doing on the downswing. So most golfers tend to overly radially deviate or hinge the club upward. So that moves the center of mass a little bit closer to the head at the top of the backswing.
Yeah.
To get that club shallowed out, they tend to tilt.
That's me.
And as soon as they tilt back here to the right to try and shallow out the club, now their hand path direction starts to move out to the right. So the problem is, if we end up hitting the ball in that phase, we would just hit a big block. So as a result, players at that point will start to actively use their hands to square it up. And that's how we kind of get that path, quite a bit inside, and the face is left of the path. So obviously when we start talking about creating maybe a consistent fade pattern, we need that face to be slightly right of the path.
Yeah.
The best faders in the world probably about 1.5 to 2 degrees right of the path with that face, and they create that very reliable sort of fade shot. So a little bit of that has to do with the center of mass. The second thing it has to do with is how we use our trail arm. And that's one that we've talked about a lot in terms of how to load this in the backswing. So many players, you can use your right arm two ways. A lot of players will use it more like a sawing motion, an in and out punching motion. But when we do that, that's causing the hand path to move quite a bit across the target line and makes it very easy to hook the golf ball. Your fade players generally use their trail arm like a bicep curl. So they're going to move that right arm up, or right arm down, but it's never going to move across their body like this with that punching movement. So that has a lot to do with how we load this going back, okay, as well as also how we unload that then coming down. Because some players will take it back quite nicely, and then maybe the elbow gets stuck behind them a little bit, and then they shift the movement and they change the way that the right arm kind of works coming down. So one of the best drills you can kind of imagine as somebody that hooks the ball a little bit too much is we're going to take the back of the right hand, okay, and at the top of the swing we're going to go ahead and we're going to bicep curl, but we're going to turn the back of our right hand a little bit down and away on the way back. On the way down, we're going to go ahead and descending bicep curl this, but instead of allowing this to rotate, we're going to feel like the back of our right hand comes down and hits your left thigh. And what that's going to make this feel like a little bit is a little bit of that over the top that you were describing, where you're feeling that club is descending down and across the target line. So functionally, how we use that right elbow is usually the primary reason why players will hook it or not hook it. So in your swing, we've talked a little bit about how to load this going back, but if we can get this to be a little bit more of a bicep curl, and then more importantly on the way down, a descending bicep curl toward your left thigh, then as we come down, we're going to see this thing opens up the pivot faster, curves the hand path left, which is going to make it possible to keep the face right of that. And that's really what we're looking for ultimately, is we want the hand path to travel slightly left, and we want the face to stay a little bit to the right, and that's going to give you that really nice, stable kind of a feel.
Hard to flip at it when you're kind of in that position going that way.
Correct.
Hard to flip that face.
You know, I love very expensive training aids, so we're going to use a nice kitchen spoon here with Ian here to help him with the path. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the spoon, and we're going to take the curved part of the spoon, and we're going to put it underneath the armpit so that the handle kind of sticks out at the back. And what this is going to help us do is this is going to help us load this right elbow up and down like a bicep curl, but on the way down, we're going to try and keep the spoon in. So now I have to rotate and lower this down this way and keep what we call our pressure points on the back of the right arm to my rib cage. And that's going to allow me to curve my hand path to the left and make it very, very simple to hit this fade.
Okay.
So good luck.
Love that.
Okay. So yeah, even put the head of the spoon right in the armpit. There you go. So you'll have a fair bit hanging out the back there. And when we're working on this drill, we're going to go fairly slow at this initially here, but we should see an immediate change in the path, which was 4 to the right. As Ian sort of works it this way, he's going to start to feel what we're talking about. You really feel that back of the right hand traveling towards your left thigh.
Absolutely.
Coming down.
Oh, out she falls at the very day.
All right.
That felt good though.
Absolutely. Okay. Lesson's done. We can all go home now. No, that was very, very nicely done. We saw an immediate 7-degree change in the path by working on this. So this would be a drill, very powerful drill. We can always use that spoon for a cup of soup after 9 holes. You may want to wash it first.
Hopefully it's not too warm.
Yeah, you may want to wash it first. But we can see an immediate change to that face-to-path relationship. And how did that feel to you, Ian? Like,
felt great.
Felt different?
Yeah, I wish the strike location numbers had shown up there, and I wish that the dynamic lie angle numbers should have shown up there. But it just felt the club face was so stable, so square for so long. The strike felt way more solid. It felt great.
Yeah, and I would say just looking at that visually, it looked like your pivot opened up a little faster because it has to. And when we start to look at the structure of the joints and location where they are at impact, faders tend to get the right shoulder down and closer to the golf ball because that keeps the right arm out of the action. Hookers of the ball, this right shoulder tends to get trapped behind the right hip. And now the only way to get to that golf ball is to throw the right arm at it. So in that position, keeping the spoon, it really forced that right shoulder around the corner, opened up that pivot, and we could almost feel that very soft little cut feel.
Yeah, feels like I've always talked to you about, I want to play the game in the safest way possible. And that to me feels like the safest way for me to play the game is to manage the club face and not have it flashing left nearly as violently as it used to.
Well, one of the things when we start looking at cuts and hooks versus each other is when we've got the path that's moving well right of the face, what happens is as the face is going more to the left, there's internal rotation happening in the trail arm. There's also a loss of dorsiflexion in the trail arm, and that's a double closing mechanism. So it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
So essentially you've got two mechanisms very rapidly firing out here, which is changing that face considerably at the ball there. Now, when we have the pressure point on the back of the right arm, and this right arm is lowering like this, we're actually using much more of our pivot to square this up. So instead of 2 or 3 different things squaring the face up, we're really relying on basically one.
Yeah.
And as we do that, the action of the arms and the hands moving this way is, if I wanted that face to be very, very stable, if I just raise this and lower this like a bicep curl, obviously I'm chopping across this a little bit, but you can see how the face never changes.
Yep.
Okay? So now the only thing that's responsible for the face squaring up is my pivot.
Pivot, yeah.
Okay? As I said, when we get trapped at that right shoulder, we don't have a choice. If we actually released it like this, you would just block it miles out to the right. So now you're forced, to do that motion, and then, on your good days you'll time it well, and on your bad days we'll see a lot of those shallow, if it really gets bad, even the odd drop kick.
Yeah, and I've been guilty of all of those in the past. All of those things you've talked about, shoulders that are closed to too square, and forearms burning on top of one another, trying to get that face to rotate and square over because the pivot hasn't led that downswing, and all that stuff is too familiar. Yeah,
so another key with that we can use is once we've done the spoon drill a few times and we get that feeling of keeping the back pressure point of your trail arm against the rib cage, the other thing we want to monitor a little bit is the finish, and we talked a little bit about this, is if your right elbow always finishes lower than your throat, it's almost impossible to hit a hook, okay? Because essentially what's happened is you've pivoted so fast, allowed the club to hinge up, but you've never thrown your arms out and away, okay? So if I stall my pivot and I throw my arms out and away, that right arm's gonna hit me in the chin, and it's gonna go flying over my shoulder. But if I can go ahead and pivot through this, keep that elbow underneath my throat, our finish is gonna look more this way. Very, very difficult to ever hit a shot left.
I think of that Robert Rock finish. When I think of that, he's such a nicely, nice through swing, and everything just couples nicely just together at the end, and doesn't look like he's overexerting it at all. Lovely swing.
It's just a nice conclusion, and the finish kind of tells the story of what happened before it, right? So if we get really good at understanding their balance points and our finishing points of the swing, we have to have done the same things to get there.
Yeah.
So that's a great on-course thing to be working on is monitor the finish, monitor your balance at the end of your swing and where you are, and generally that'll help you around impact.
Yeah, love that. Okay, let's
try it again. That was great. Yeah, it might be easier to actually curve the spoon the other way, so it's in toward, that way. Just so you can kind of feel the bulge of the spoon in the back of the arm there.
So it's a great little drill, this.
Well, that's very similar to the drill some of you that follow me on social media with the stick, right? We'll put the stick there.
Yeah.
Okay, and we can kind of describe that drill as well, but I found when working with players on a crowded range, that stick starts to fly all over the place. At least the spoon kind of just drops and falls on the ground. So it's a little safer with the spoon.
Spear the guy in the bay next to you.
100%.
Okay. So it came out a little more there.
Yeah, now one of the things that we do want to understand is that we can actually use that device a little bit to monitor the ball flight. If you kept that spoon forever, you'd be David Duval.
Yeah.
Okay, you'd be a pull fader of the ball, probably hit the ball a little low, a little bit of quite substantial left to right ball flight if we kept the spoon in forever. Most of the players, as long as the spoon falls out on this side of you toward the target, generally we'll see that the path values there were pretty good, right? That one was
that actually felt like a really good swing. And one of the questions I get a lot is people asking me about the dynamic. What do you do if you're a handle raiser And that's, again, I was glad that showed up there because it didn't on the first one, that the dynamic lie angle is now 0-0.
Right.
So we're not kind of coming through that, trying to manage the club face by tilting, the shaft upwards.
Yeah, and that really stems from the position of the right shoulder.
Yeah.
So when that right shoulder is trapped and we throw these arms up, a lot of times that's going to raise the handle up this way. Okay, and if the handle were down and I keep the shoulder, this would just sort of wrap around the golf ball.
Yeah.
So a lot of times the player will sort of hang on and drive the handle up to try and save the face, but now they still create sort of a very large maybe push draw with that. Now because that right shoulder is much closer to the golf ball in this position, the handle location is much lower.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why we're seeing that dynamic loft sort of zero out a little bit
Love
here.
it. Absolutely.
And still a little bit of a fade, a little push fade on that one.
Yeah.
But again, right now, I would say the most important number for us to look at is face to path.
Definitely.
As long as that face is right
To
of
the
path,
right.
ideally your perfect one's going to start, maybe a half degree to 1 degree left.
Yeah.
Okay, and then fade. Those are the kind of numbers that we work on a little bit with Mackenzie Hughes.
Yeah.
He likes to hit a little fade predominantly, so we like to get that sort of path and face value, path about minus 1 to 2, face around a half degree closed.
Yeah.
That gives the ball a little bit of a start direction left. Then he's got plenty of room to move that a little bit to the right.
Love it. Love it. And I loved seeing in that last one as well there, something I struggle with and I always work towards is a little more spin. So able to try and get a little more dynamic loft through the face not shutting over, closing over, losing that loft through rotation. The club's moving down more, so that spin loft's increasing. Right. So I'm able to spin the irons about 600 RPM more on a slower swing.
Yeah.
I love that. It's very easy to take spin away, but it's harder to increase spin with the modern equipment, the ball and the club.
100%, especially, as I said, with the ball and obviously the lofts that a lot of the irons are at now. I mean, it's difficult sometimes to get that spin right. And the fact is, in this position, because the pivot is coming around the corner a little bit more, and the motion is more of this descending bicep curl, there's that little bit of extra friction that we're applying to the back of the ball, as opposed to kind of that motion.
Yeah, that almost like that little top spin motion, trying to shut it over.
Which might be okay on the driver, but certainly not so good on the irons.
Definitely, definitely. Okay.
All right, let's see if we can keep a couple in. We'll get a big pull fade going here. Top of the backswing feel a little tighter?
It does. Feels great. Everything feels really connected and it's all moving together nicely.
Okay, good.
So we've got to get a little more of the pull element to it.
Yeah, we just got to get that right shoulder, to be honest with you. We just got to cover that ball a little bit more. And that's certainly not a new swing thought or something that's, people have been talking about that for years. Chuck Cook, who's one of my mentors, I really respect Chuck in the teaching industry. And, that's one thing that Chuck's always really preached, is covering the ball with that shoulder.
Yeah.
And really what that does is that sets up the structure of that right arm and forces the right arm to sort of move in this descending bicep curl type of a movement. If that right shoulder gets trapped, as I said before, we don't have a choice. You have to throw it at that point.
Yeah.
Or else you're going to block it. So what I want you to feel on this next one, Ian, as you do it, is I want you to feel like you hit the ball with the front of your right shoulder.
Okay.
Okay, so you're really going to feel like you take the front of your right shoulder and sort of point it toward the target at impact.
Okay. It's a little better start line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we did a good job there. I think, obviously the face went with the path a little bit on that one. But I think we'll see pretty neutral, okay? So 0.9 still a little in to out, okay? But still pretty reasonable. Okay, so let's work it even a little bit more.
Okay.
Let's get that thought in the next one, really slapping the back of your right hand
down
into your left thigh.
Okay.
Okay. And that'll help open up the pivot a little faster. There you go.
It's a great thought, that. It's a really good feeling, that kind of motion moving that way.
Yeah.
Really manages the face so nicely.
And one of the things that we want our your viewers to understand, I mean, look at the difference there, 3.4 out to in there, so much more substantial with that. We've got all these elements. Some of these elements are making the club go this way, some of these elements are making the club go this way, and really that downswing is just combining those pieces. So a straight rotation here, depending on when we release a club. If I rotate and I stall my pivot here, my arms get flung off to the right.
Yeah.
If I'm able to continue to rotate, right, I can make my pivot actually go to the left. So the pivot actually could be right or left, depending on how long we pivot.
Yeah.
Okay. But then the key one, as in for most players, is most of them want to use that sawing motion with the right arm, because most golfers don't turn very well in their backswing. They get very vertical with the swing, so generally they're over the top. So they're trying to push the club this way to try and create a pathway that's a little bit more inside. So that's something that a lot of our golfers will have to do. That might be the only way that they can get a reasonably neutral pathway, is to use the arm like a saw.
Yeah.
Okay. So I want your viewers to understand that this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but in your case it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you turn great, you slide great, you do all the things that good players do. This is the one element that we don't want to be moving in to out.
Yeah.
We want to feel like this is actually moving out to in.
Right.
With that type of movement.
It's a great thought.
So let's see if we can repeat that. That was fantastic.
That one felt good.
And again, your lie was pretty good. In fact, 1.5 down.
1.5 down on the dynamic lie, which is absolutely fine.
Awesome.
Just it's the difference in the finish feel in that position is night and day different for me.
Yeah.
I'm normally kind of up there, very elevated, exit, up high, and
yeah. I mean,
that's
definitely very
huge.
Robert Rockish. Okay, the hair's not quite as good. Okay, but
he and I don't like a hat. We've got that in common.
Well,
His hair's a lot
there you
better
go.
than mine, but
I did a little bit of work for Robert about 6 or 7 years ago, and a real nice guy. But he's certainly got a nice head of hair there on him.
Staying strong.
Absolutely. Now that was great. So again, 1.5 out to in. So we're starting to consistently create a pathway that's at least 4 to 5 degrees left of where we started. And we're starting to see a very consistent little fade come out of this. And as you said, your spin rate's actually come up.
It's coming up quite a bit.
Right, and your landing angle is probably going to get certainly a little steeper with that as well, correct?
Yeah, just that's going to really help me manage low points, going to help me manage distance control with the golf ball and not have those inconsistent distances, because it's as easy for me to be 5,200. At 65 is, I've never really seen a 6-iron at 6,500. I had to check if that was a 7.
You might need some new shafts.
Well, we've got a few to choose from. Well, guys, hopefully this is giving you a little insight for those of you who are sitting thinking, this is me. This motion, this saw motion, the kind of stall of the pivot and the flip, and the shallowness of the angle of attack and all those things. That's some great little tools. The spoon is a gem. That's an absolute gem that anyone can use. Yeah,
absolutely. And I love low tech. As much as we have high tech, we're surrounded by high tech here. In reality, on the course or on the range, these feels are very good. Some players you'll see on the PGA Tour, they'll take their shirt and they'll kind of tuck it underneath their arm, which, by the way, is fully legal in a tournament. You're allowed to do that. But you can kind of feel the pressure points back there and kind of get the same sensations. If you do start to feel a little loose with that motion, is just tuck that sleeve a little bit before each shot, still get the feel of the back of that right hand kind of going toward the left thigh, and it's going to be very easy to produce that little fade shot.
Well, hopefully, guys, this is the start of the season. This is what you've been waiting for. Those of you who maybe have snuck a couple of rounds in and been struggling a bit with that kind of hook shot, and you can get to the range and implement some of these things. I genuinely think this will change a lot of people. I look forward to all the comments about it, because that's what excites us most about doing these videos, is the people who get the results from trying it, whether it's speed drills or whether it's something like this, trying to eliminate a flaw that's been in their game perhaps their whole life. And I'm sure these are some new concepts. The thought of the motion of the trail arm and moving it towards the left pocket and all those things to manage the pivot and the hand path, making it go more left. It's good stuff.
Well, hopefully that works. Obviously, it seems to be working quite nicely, and I think that'll be the new drill.
I think that is the new drill. Okay, guys, stay tuned for more. We'll see you again soon.